Magic is something of a creative expression. You use cards that you enjoy and to showcase something of your personality sometimes. Competitive Magic can sometimes be described as playing the best cards in the format and try to assemble the best deck in the format. On this YouTube channel we usually use statistics to figure out what those best cards actually are, so that we can build the best deck in the format. I often have videos where I showcase things like this. Here you see the One Ring and a total of 724 different decks looked at, and an average win rate calculated from all of those tournament entries of a 21.18%, while the One Ring have, only looking at decks including the One Ring, 127, you have an average win rate of 24. So here you have an indication that the One Ring is a good card. But when you get into a metagame, a competitive metagame, you can be a little bit creative, and a very important thing about being a competitive player is that you play the players. Thada Adel is a mono blue commander with rule them all function here basically. Whenever Thada Adel deals combat damage to a player, search that player's library for an artifact and exile it. Then that player shuffle his or her library. Until end of turn you may play that card. So going back to this statistics page, the One Ring. Now the One Ring is actually a really good card. And it has a... So, I want to say something. All the decks I've actually looked at, some of them entered into tournaments when the One Ring didn't exist. And it's been something of a playtest card. So I think the inclusion rate, you see the circle pie diagram here, it is a 17.5% inclusion rate. So it's a very low inclusion rate. However, I think it's going to increase over time, especially as it's starting to prove to be a good card. More and more players will pick it up. However, you also have 3 opponents, so the chance of being a One Ring in the game from one of your opponents is pretty good. This means that Thada Adel is something similar to Sur the Enchanter, as Sur is the Necropotence in the command zone, Thada Adel is the One Ring in the command zone. This means that you can build a mono blue deck entirely focused on consistently always getting the One Ring into play, more or less. You are usually gonna go up against opponents that have the One Ring in their deck, so to say. And it's a great card in general. It's like a value engine that you can actually turn into a combo piece if you build your entire deck around it. Heuristic Study is better, but the One Ring comes with options and tricks. The obvious thing is Manifold Key and Voltaic Key. They basically untap an artifact, which means that you have 2 rings. But there's a lot of different ways to actually untap the One Ring in various ways. For example, this land that comes into play untapped, taps for blue, and it's a perfect fit. We have the Voltaic Servant at the beginning of your end step, untap target the One Ring artifact. Vizier of the Tumbling Sands, untap another target permanent. It's also something you can cycle away, so I don't view this like a terrible dead card. It's not a good card, but it functions really good. We have good synergy here with the One Ring, but if nothing is going according to plan, you can actually toss this away. And by the way, when you do, you get to untap something. So in like desperate measures, if you're trying to combo off in the Storm fashion this turn, just cycle this, draw a card, and untap the One Ring. And I guess we definitely have to showcase Mind Over Matter. Shows and discard a card, tap or untap target artifact, creature, or land. And boom, yeah, you go infinite, you draw your entire deck. You probably deck yourself, so be a little bit cautious of how many cards you actually draw. So you need to stop somewhere. There is, however, a trick, a reset. So the Spacer Kitten and the One Ring don't synergize that well, because when you flicker the One Ring, you're gonna reset all the burden counters, so then you tap it and you draw only 1 card. However, in the essence of Mind Over Matter, that could actually be good, because now you can draw, discard, draw, discard, draw, discard, and that could be better to safely draw out your entire deck. We also have Teferi Temporal Archmage. He basically untaps the One Ring and some rocks. So here we have a, I'm not gonna say ritual, but you have a generation of mana and a huge generation of card draw. We have dramatic reversal, so when you're building storm decks, you want cards to generate mana, be rituals, and card draw at the same time. So with dramatic reversal, the One Ring and a few mana rocks that you've stolen with Thada Adel or you just play or draw into, the dramatic reversal becomes the ultimate card for your storm finisher. We have weaker versions, Turnabout, the same thing, basically untap all artifacts. Hidden Strings, this is actually kinda interesting, so it's weaker than Dramatic Reversal on paper, but it has Cipher, so you connect it to Thada, and then Thada attacks, and you get to untap the One Ring a second time and an artifact, or an island, with your Thada. So you basically cast Hidden Strings 2 times during your storm attempt, or kinda depends. If you already attacked with Thada, then it is what it is. Clock of Omens. Tap 2 untapped artifacts you control, untap target artifact. This is not a storm functional card, but I would like to showcase it anyway. Untap all artifacts during each other player's untap step. Similar to a Seedborn Muse, it's gonna untap all of your mana rocks and your One Ring. So here you basically go and explode. But then there's a lot of weird ones too, like Twiddle! Untap target artifact, creature or land. So for 1 blue mana, untap the One Ring and draw an enormous amount of cards. Good. Reality Spasm, same thing. It's an X spell, untap X or tap X things. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to untap the One Ring. Psychic Puppetry, same thing. Let's take a quick look at this deck list by Snake that Pontus actually played in one of our gameplay videos. So if you actually want to see this deck in action piloted by Pontus, link in the description below of the video. No spoilers, but it was a good showcase, I think. And obviously, as always, link in the description below of the video for this deck list as well. I would also like to give a shout out to actually Acquire, which is basically the commander in the 99. So our commander costs 3 mana, and then the One Ring costs 4 mana, so you pay 3 and then 4 on 2 different turns. Acquire is 5 mana, and search target opponent's library for an artifact, put that card into play under your control, then that player shuffle his or her library. Great card for this specific deck that is looking for the One Ring from your opponents. And obviously we are playing the One Ring inside this deck as well. But that also means that tutors will work great here. So you aren't actually commander dependent. You are kinda commander centric, or you could view it in a different way, I guess. But the deck's goal is to find the One Ring from your opponents or your own One Ring. So cards like Fabricate, great. In this deck we're also playing Coveted Jewel. I want to talk about this one. So when this comes into play you draw 3 cards. It costs 6 mana, which is quite a lot, but when you're storming off it's something you could actually sometimes afford. However, when 1 or more creatures an opponent controls attack you and aren't blocked, that player draws 3 cards and gains control of Coveted Jewel, and this thing becomes untapped. So it's a group hug, very risky card. And we're not sitting with a lot of blockers in play, so when you're casting that is when you're kinda winning the game. Now Coveted Jewel and Displacer Kitten is actually rather interesting, because you cast a spell, Flicker Coveted Jewel, which means that it re-enters the battlefield untapped, so you can tap it again for mana, but you also draw 3 cards. So once again, you have now converted every little card here into a ritual, the good ritual, the ritual that draws cards and generates mana. So you could win the game with just Coveted Jewel and a Displacer Kitten and just cast a Chromox, cast a Lotus Petal and dig through your library that way. It's not equally secured, but it is something to know about. You have other means to win the game besides the One Ring. As this is a deck tech video about Thada, we need to talk a little bit more about what Thada could potentially do. So you have potential access to other cool key artifacts that sometimes people play. So let's take a look at Bola Citadel. Now, looking at 724 different decks, it has a very low inclusion rate. So the chance of like getting into a game where you can actually steal a Bola Citadel is rather low. Also, you actually need triple black for this on your mono blue deck, which is something you can solve, but still it's not something that's gonna like work out. I don't think you should build your Thada deck around the concept of being able to utilize Bola Citadel. Sometimes you might actually get it into play, but don't build your deck towards that. Wishclaw Talisman, however, is heavily played. And now I would like to mention something. You see, you have the One Ring inside your deck. This is going to increase the chance of you getting your the One Ring better. You see here, it has a 50-50 split, more or less, so to say. So the chance of getting into a game where you can steal a Wishclaw Talisman is pretty secured. And from the Wishclaw you get your One Ring, or well, you can get whatever you want from your deck basically. Now normally people just play the typical Mana Rock, Solar Ring, Mana Crypt, Mox, Chromox and Mox Diamond. But sometimes people actually play different things like Curse Totem. You don't really care about Curse Totem at all, so if you need to interact with one of your opponents in a form of way and another opponent have a Curse Totem, you can find that card and put that into play. You can even politics with people like, is it okay if I attack you, get your Curse Totem so you don't lose to that player over there? Could absolutely happen. But sometimes people play really strange and weird artifacts that could be great for various situations, so you have something of a toolbox commander as well. So Thada Adel is offering you a form of functional value engine that you can convert into a combo piece while also being able to basically work as a value engine herself, finding mana rocks, finding toolbox options like Curse Totem and other utilizing artifacts that other people play. Like you can find Voltaic Key and Manifold Key from other people's decks too. And as you are on mono blue with a huge potential card draw from the One Ring, you can sit with a lot of control magic like an Offer, Commandeer. We don't play Adnos because we're not on black, so the CMC cost of this doesn't matter. In fact, we have, when everything is working according to plan, a really huge hand size, so it could be good to have cards that sacrifice the hand size instead of paying mana for them. Dispel, we have Mana Drain, High Tide for more Storm, Force of Will, Force Negation, Fierce Guardianship, we are commander-centric, Mindbreak Trap, one of the best counterspells currently in the format, or well, it's a discussion, but I currently think it's something of the best, or one of the best. But you can build this deck in so many different strange variations. And as I would like to give a shout out to Snake and Kazu for putting this deck together, you yourself could go absolute bananas. Thada is a very open commander with a lot of different options. It's just that we got a really good functional game plan just because we are playing the players suddenly. But everything that Thada was doing before that is still applicable. As I like to say in my statistics videos, statistics isn't everything, you need to apply the statistics. And currently we have some good statistics that Wishclaw Talisman and the One Ring are heavily played. So we have a metagame trick playing the players here. But also very importantly, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, Magic is about being creative and showcase your personality. Thada Adel is a really fun commander to actually pilot, because every game will be a little bit unique, depending on what the artifacts your opponents are playing.